Okay, so let's take a look at exam 63, section 3, the question number 1. Say, what is the issue presented? The point that Acme engineers spent $500,000 relocating knee-level switches in its newer locomotives is offered in the commentator's argument as. So you got to stop. Now that issue is an unusual issue. So you got to say, do I understand? Why am I reading this? Okay, so the issue here is, somewhere in this argument, it's pointed out that the Acme engines spent $500,000 to relocate knee-level switches in newer locomotives. And the commentator is going to raise that in order to make a certain point. So let me see what I have. I begin with slash marks, so I want to be anywhere. So again, I'm just going to do periods right now. I have a slash mark after switch, with line 4, after hazard, line 7 or so, after the word inconvenient, maybe line 11 or 12, after the word inconvenience, that's the next to last line. And what you're doing is just, okay, and then I see the word thus. So I have every reason to believe that the conclusion of the argument will follow in that last sentence. So now the issue is formed. I want to pay particular attention to the commentator. Why is the commentator telling me that Acme spent $500,000 relocating these switches? Okay, here goes. Reading textually. Commentator. In last week's wreck involving one of Acme Engine's older locomotives, the engineer lost control of the train when his knee accidentally struck a fuel shutdown switch. You stop. That's what a slash mark says. Okay, I get it. There was an accident last week, and they're describing how it happened, and it was the knee accidentally struck a fuel switch down switch. Acme claims it is not liable because it never realized that the knee-level switches were a safety hazard. So now we have the commentator pointing out, by the way, Acme claims they're not liable because they never realized that it was a hazard to have the knee-level switch down there. I got this. Next sentence. When asked why it relocated knee-level switches in its newer locomotives, Acme said engineers had complained that they were simply inconvenient. So you stop and process that. Okay, so Acme is saying the reason we relocated this is because engineers said it was inconvenient, which is consistent with the second sentence where they never realized it was a safety hazard, right? So the information offered in the third sentence is consistent with the claim in the second sentence. Second sentence is we never realized it was dangerous. The third sentence is that would say, well, why did you relocate them? And they said because the engineers said it was inconvenient. Okay, next sentence. However, so however tells you there's going to be a challenge to whatever in that third sentence. However, it is unlikely that Acme would have spent the $500,000 it took to relocate the switches in the newer locomotives merely because of the inconvenience. Okay, and that's what we've been directed to. So basically you're saying, well, why was that, why did the commentator include that information? And don't you think the commentator include that information to challenge the claim that Acme raised in the second sentence, right? Because Acme said in the second sentence, we never realized it was a danger. But now in the fourth sentence, we're told it's unlikely you'd spend $500,000 just because it was inconvenient, which is what was raised in the third sentence, right? So you're saying, well, wait a minute, basically the third sentence is a fake out. Well then, hello. All right. And then the other is, thus Acme Engine should be held liable. So if you break this argument down, the commentator believes they should be held liable because the commentator does not believe the claim in the second sentence that that Acme didn't realize it was dangerous. So this money was spent with a knowledge of the prior danger. Okay, so that's all. I'm not trying to get the exact words, but I got it. So now I read the answer choices, and I'm just looking for that concept. And A says, so the $500,000 thing was proof that the engineer is not at all responsible for the train wreck. No, nobody's saying he may have been, he may have been somewhat responsible. So it is not the case that's there. It is there basically to rebut Acme's claim that they didn't realize it was dangerous. So A is not it. B, is it therefore a reason for believing that the wreck would have occurred even if Acme had remodeled their older locomotives? No, it's in the commentators raised that to challenge Acme's initial claim. You've got to stick to the issue. So no, right, that is there to challenge the claim that they never realized that it was dangerous. So B's not there. C, is it there as an explanation of why the train wreck occurred? No. We know why the train wreck occurred. That's in the first sentence. That has nothing to do with the $500,000. D, is it there as an evidence that knee-level switches are not in fact hazardous? No. If they weren't hazardous, they probably would have left them there and not spent the money. I'm kind of thinking E may be the answer. E, is it there as an indication that Acme engines had been aware of the potential dangers of knee-level switches before the wreck occurred? You bet. And again, what I'm saying is you've got to be patient with this test. You prepare for law school by preparing correctly for the LSAT. E is such the answer. And what the words the writer has used are mimic the concept the reader should produce having performed analysis. So the answer to number 1 is E for Euphrates. Let's take a look at number 2. The issue presented, the reasoning in the artist's argument is flawed. Okay, so we have a flaw. We need to fully understand the issue. And again, you need to do an issue recognition preparation. You've got to be prepared and fully understand each issue. And that'll be on a separate video. So anyway, here, the reasoning in the artist's argument is flawed. Slash mark, so I have a slash mark after the word rent on the line 3. And that's it. Okay, let's see what I have here. So, this is an artist, and the artist says, almost everyone in the country really wants to be an artist, even though they may have to work other jobs to pay the rent. Okay, stop, process. It's almost everyone in the country. And what do they want to be? They want to be an artist, even if they have to work other jobs. Okay, no evidence has been given to me for that. That's simply a claim by the artist. Now, I want to say, basically, so why? Why are you telling me that almost what is the supporting evidence for that? Here you go. Next sentence. After all, just about everyone I know hopes to someday be able to make a living as a painter, musician, or poet, even if they currently work as dishwashers or discount store clerks. Well, it's flawed. You're reading for a flaw. You're not reading to be a social worker. You're reading for what is the flaw, and the flaw should, for me anyway, jumps out. The conclusion is that first sentence, which is that almost everyone in the country. Well, if you're going to conclude about almost everyone in the country, would it be fair to say your evidence has to impact almost everybody in the country? You can't take a segment and go from the segment and say, my evidence is about this segment, and then say, and therefore almost everybody in the country. So we went from a conclusion of almost everybody in the country to everyone I know. Well, Chuckles, you know what? A lot of people you don't know. The flaw is the sample is too small. The sample may be unrepresented. You could go any number of ways on this, right? That if he's an artist, he's not going to know what other people want to be. He's not going to know what I want to be because I'm not an artist. And as a percent of the population, there aren't that many artists. So they can go any number of ways, whether it's underrepresented or it's unrepresentative. That's the answer. That's the analysis. The issue flaw. The law is that argument. I've read the argument textually. It takes the time it takes. You rush the read and you toast because the writer didn't rush the write. Got it. You perform the analysis. Now, A. contains a premise that presupposes the truth of the conclusion. I mean, shoot me. If you're waiting to do the analysis till you read A, you're going to say, well, I don't have no clue what they just said. Well, okay, shame on you. What A is saying doesn't apply here, is that you would have a premise, basically, that says, it presumes the conclusion itself. This premise is different. This premise has to do with, what I know, and then he extrapolates from that to, and therefore it must be everyone. So he's not presuming the truth of the of the conclusion, which is that everyone knows. He's asserting that. B is the flaw that presumes that what is true of each person in a country is true of the country's population as a whole. No, there is no assumption that he hasn't given us any evidence of what is true of each person in the country. It's just people he knows. So no. And again, it's reading textually. The writer is not your friend. C. Defends a view solely on the grounds that the view is widely held. There is no evidence that this is widely held or not widely held, so C is not the answer. D. Bases its conclusion on a sample that is unlikely to accurately represent people in the country as a whole. Bada bing, bada boom. Right? He's an artist. He knows other people in the world of art, whether they're painters, musicians, or poets, they're artists. So D is the answer, and if D were A, I would pick A and I'd be out of there. E is the, and again, you would never read E. D's the answer. You've got to pull the trigger where you have a high degree of certainty that what you have said is correct, or where there can only be one correct answer. And here it's both. E says it fails to make a needed distinction between wanting to be an artist and making a living as an artist, and that's not the flaw. So, the answer to question number 2 is D for Drusus. Again, let's try number 3 here. IRAC, issue, always issue. The example above, so it's an example above, best illustrates which one of the following propositions. So this is a principal issue. You're going to be given an example. From the example, you're going to have to extrapolate or infer out to a broader statement. So what that means is, if an example is about a blue jay, well, an illustration, if you're saying that best illustrates a proposition, well, blue jays, it might be a proposition about birds. Okay, so you're going to read about something specific. The answer choice is going to be more general. So let's see. I have my slash mark after the word today, slash mark after the word faster, and that takes me to the end of this. Okay, here you go. The QWERTY keyboard, beats me, became the standard keyboard with the invention of the typewriter and remains the standard for typing devices today. You stop, I got a slash mark. Okay, I got it. It became the standard and it is the standard. Next sentence. If an alternative known as the, whatever that is, Dvorak keyboard, were today's standards, typists would type significantly faster. Okay, so we have a standard. There's an alternative to the standard, and if we had used the alternative, we would type faster. Okay, next final sentence. Nevertheless, it is not practical to switch to the Dvorak keyboard because the cost to society of switching in terms of time, money, and frustration would be greater than the benefits that would be ultimately gained from faster typing. Okay, you stop. So, don't switch. When you have a standard, there are times you're not going to switch even when the alternative has certain benefits. Okay. And really, that's all there is to it. But the answer is not now going to be about a keyboard, because it's got to be something about broader. But what principle do I take from that? Even though there are benefits to an alternative to a standard, You know, there are sometimes you want to stick with the standard because it's just not worth it, notwithstanding the benefits to the alternative. That's it, I'm done. A, is this the proposition? Often it is not worthwhile to move to a process that improves speed if it comes at the expense of accuracy. There's nothing in here about you would lose accuracy. This is stupid, sorry. Stupid, don't pick A again. B, how about is the proposition? People usually settle on a standard because the standard is more efficient than any alternative. I have no clue how the people settled on the QWERTY as the standard. You certainly could infer B. You know, if this was say, well, what would you like to infer? Well, you can infer B. But it's not, you've lost the issue. You weren't asked to do that. You're required to say what proposition is consistent with that hypothetical, and I have no idea, you know, why people initially settled on the QWERTY. So B is not, it's C. People often remain with an entrenched standard rather than move to a more efficient alternative simply because they dislike change. I have no clue if that took place here, whether it was because they dislike change. I don't really know whether or not this is an entrenched standard, although I suspect it is. But again, C, you could infer C and say, aha, yes, but you weren't asked to infer. You were asked to explain how it's okay for an alternative to replace a standard, even though the alternative has certain benefits over that standard. And that's not doing it. D, the emotional cost associated with change is a factor that sometimes outweighs the financial considerations. You know, there's not a lot here about emotional cost. You know, frustration, I guess, is mentioned. I mean, you could say, well, frustration is mentioned and frustration is an emotion. But also mentioned are time and money, as well as frustration. And it doesn't seem to be financial considerations. It's just, I mean, again, you can infer financial considerations from the fact that people will end up typing faster, and therefore if they're using QWERTY, they're typing slower, and you can extrapolate out, but it's a pretty tenuous connection. Let's look at E, the fact that a standard already in wide use, the fact that a standard is already in wide use can be a crucial factor in making it a more practical choice than an alternative. And that's what we have here. We have a standard that remains in wide use, and the mere fact of that is that it can be a crucial factor in making it a more practical choice than an alternative, and the answer is E for Euphrates. Let's take a look at question number 4. The issue presented, which one of the following is a point of disagreement? Okay, what do the two people disagree about? You're going to disagree about the conclusion, or you're just going to disagree about the reasoning, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing else. Let's see what Sam says. Here's what Sam says. Mountain lions, a protected species, are preying on bighorn shrimp. Another protected species. I have a slash mark there. Okay. Got it. We must let nature take its course and hope the bighorn survive. So Sam is saying, stay the hell out of the way. Yes, Sam is saying, you know what? What will be, will be. All right? Don't interfere. Got it. Let's see what Melly says. Nonsense, okay? We know they disagree. We must do what we can to ensure the survival of the bighorn, even if that means limiting the mountain lion population. So again, the work, the analysis has to be done before you look at the answer choices. Isn't it pretty clear that what they disagree about is whether we should interfere or not? Excuse me. So that's it. I mean, I don't know what word they're going to use. I'm not expecting them to use the word interfere, but don't you get that Sam is saying, don't interfere with nature, don't get in the way, right? And Melly is saying, no, we got to help out the bighorn. We got to get involved. Okay. A. Point of disagreement. Is this a point of disagreement? That humans should not interfere to protect bighorn sheep from mountain lions. Kind of thinking that's the point. I'm kind of thinking if you ask Sam, should humans not interfere to protect the sheep? I'm kind of thinking Sam's going to say, damn right, don't interfere. I'm kind of saying to Melly, if we said humans should not interfere to protect the bighorn sheep, I kind of think Melly would say, no, we need to help them. We get them bottles of woolite or something. We got to help them out, the sheep. That's the answer. So it's A, not B, it's not C, it's not D, it's not E. You want to be lawyers. You have to prepare and you have confidence in your preparation. Now, well, we'll look at B, C, D, and E, but A is the answer, and it's good night, lights out, I'm out of here. B, is this what they disagree about? That the preservation of a species as a whole is more important than the loss of a few individuals. No, it's about, basically it's implied extinction, no, not about that. C, the preservation of a predatory species is easier to ensure than the preservation of the species preyed upon. That's got nothing to do with what they're saying. Do you see how bringing in your own baggage, like a person in real life could look at that statement and say that's an accurate statement. In our world, that's an accurate statement. Nobody cares about our world. You care about this world. This is reading textually. Nobody cares what you think or what your world is telling you. So see, yeah, I can see people picking C, go, oh, I like that. Well, that's great, but that wasn't what these people disagreed about. D, any measures to limit the mountain lion population would likely push the species to extinction. The speculation, I don't know. They're certainly not disagreeing about it. The issue's not been raised. And E, if the population of mountain lions is not limited, the bighorn sheep species will not survive. Again, that's speculation. Again, you can take your own world in there, and you can infer that would happen because gosh, if we don't limit the mountain lions are going to chow down on the sheep, but that's not what this argument was. And again, the LSAT is the law, which it just has to do with Sam and Melly said, and nothing else matters. Not anything in your real world. So the answer to 4 is A for Augustus. Let's take a look at number 5, the last question here in this segment. Which one of the following can be inferred from the parent statements? Okay, so to infer is to take one step further. To infer is, the definition of inference is, the inference is a fact, not part of your original set of facts, but that flows from those facts, okay? So you have a cell phone, your cell phone goes off, you see a phone number, you see, I see the name Vicky Gorman, that's the name of my wife. I see Vicky's phone number, I see Vicky's name, and I say, hi Vicky. Well, that's an inference, because it may not be Vicky on that phone. It's a fact I see Vicky's name, it's a fact I see the number I know to be Vicky's. It is not yet a fact that I have heard her voice. And yet I say, hi Vicky. So that's an example of an inference. So here they want an inference, so we're going to extend ever so slightly. First thing, slash mark after the word good. We've done a long run-on sentence here, and a slash mark after schoolwork. Okay, so let me see what I have here. I'm looking to infer, so as I read this, I'm looking to go just past where it was. Parent. Pushing very young children into rigorous study in an effort to make our nation more competitive does more harm than good. And I have the person's position. So let me reflect on that again. Pushing very young children, so we have a specific category, into rigorous study in an effort to make our nation more competitive does more harm than good. That sounds like a conclusion. It sounds like, I want that person to explain to me why. Why are you saying that? Okay, but I'm dealing with very young children. I'm dealing with rigorous studies, and to make our nation more competitive. That's not a good idea. Next sentence. Curricula for these young students must address their special developmental needs. Okay, So they have special developmental needs. And while rigorous work in secondary school makes sense, secondary school, right? We're not talking about very young children now, we're talking about secondary school. And while rigorous work in secondary school makes sense, the same approach in the early years of primary school produces only short-term gains and may cause young children to burn out on schoolwork. A lot in that second sentence, right? But basically the second sentence seems to be saying, hey, you know, rigorous work seems appropriate for secondary school, less so here in primary school because it may cause students to burn out. Okay. And why? Because they have special developmental needs, which is what, okay. Final sentence. Using very young students as pawns in the race to make the nation economically competitive is unfair and may ultimately work against us. Got it. Stop. So what is this person saying? Is it something like, it would not be because young students, very young students, have specific developmental needs. We don't want to impose upon them a rigorous curriculum. Something like that. So again, I'm not trying to get the exact words, but I got it. Okay, let me see how they complete this. A, for our nation to be competitive, our secondary school curriculum must include more rigorous study than it does now. That does not complete this. And again, they're going to help you out. They're not looking for you to come up with the exact words that the writer came up with. They're going to have to give you choices where if you've read this textually, you're going to know it's not the answer and you're not going to have to do analysis. So A is not the answer. B, the developmental needs of secondary school students are not now being addressed in our high schools. You could infer that, but I don't know that. They're saying the problem here is the developmental needs aren't being addressed in elementary school, not in secondary school. C, our country can be competitive only if the developmental needs of all of our students can be met. And again, I get to, this is like a feel-good answer. You want to say, oh yes, in my life I know that's true. Well, nobody cares about your life. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know that our country can be competitive only if the developmental needs of all of our students can be met. That's way too aggressive a reach for me. D, a curriculum of rigorous study does not adequately address the developmental needs of primary school students. Bada bing, bada boom. That's what it said. That was the problem. They're saying, you're gonna, it's gonna mess you up if you if we make that elementary school experience too rigorous. So D, a curriculum of rigorous study does not adequately address the developmental needs of primary school students is so the answer. And E, unless our nation encourages more rigorous study in the early years of primary school, we cannot be economically competitive. Again, it's too sweeping a statement. There may be other ways we can be. We may get to be economically competitive. We just may do it and be unfair to young people and mess them up emotionally. So the answer to question number 5 is D for Drusus. Again, you're not trying to get the words. When you read textually, you get the general contours of how the writer has to frame the words in the answer choice, and that's how you use IRAC.